The aging process continues to be an unholy bitch. Stugotz just dropped something on the floor here and picked it up and said, and the words were less painful than the wheezing way he said it, bending down becomes increasingly hard was the last sentence that I just heard from Stugotz.
Yeah, it's bending's not what it used to be. It's not for me. It hurts. It hurts to bend. It hurts to get out of bed. It hurts to get out of my car. It hurts. Aging hurts, man. You're feeling it too. I know you are.
I am, but I'm doing a great many things to basically just avoid pain. Everything that I do right now is just to make sure that I'm not in pain. But you're the young one here in this room today because Greg Cody's on his way, but he is stuck. And I don't know if Jessica's felt this or not. This is the single worst time of year in South Florida if you want to get around because Art Basel and Money is in town. December's terrible. Look, under all circumstances, Miami is overcrowded, more overcrowded than it's ever been. We are not equipped for what is here. Our transit system is not equipped for everything that's here. But what's here this week is totally insane. And I was moderately relieved, though disappointed, to hear that Stugotz and Greg Cody's book signing tomorrow isn't going to happen because I simply don't want to drive at 6 p.m. to Coral Gables because it's going to take me 2.5 hours to get there from the beach, and it's only like 10 miles.
That factored into our decision to reschedule this thing, and I demanded a synagogue.
Yo, chicken time.
They're going to put me in a church.
I don't know what's going on here. Dan needs to fill out his lineup.
I gotta believe
and
you.
Also, there's got to be more to this story.
Stugotz.
Stugotz.
This is not.
That's a funny chicken.
This reeks of Stugotz.
We will find out whenever it is that Greg Cody gets here.
We promoted it so well yesterday, too.
I know.
Dan, everyone knows real Miami people don't do any Basel events. Mike, what are you up to this weekend?
I have to do one Basel event today, but I don't want to. But I'm there to support. It's I've seen videos of people in traffic, and it made me realize how happy I am to be here at the Elser and not at the Clevelander and reliving throughout the oral history episodes. We are now in like the portion of the show's history where we were afternoon drive at the beach. And I remember for a good year and a half, I was getting home at 9:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Don't miss that at all.
Ouch.
I'm really happy here. The Elser's great.
Yeah. Wait, so you're going to an Art Basel event?
I got a pretty busy day today here on this show. And if I may, can I plug Kane's Insight real quick? My buddies over at Kane's Insight.
I think
what
you
if
just
we
did.
said no?
If you said no, I would. It's totally your prerogative.
Well, you
it's
asking
also Shadow
us?
Show.
You were asking Dan, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying. You asked what my day was
Mike
like.
is wearing slacks today.
Yeah,
he means
linen.
business.
The suit jacket's in the car. You want me to grab it?
Do people?
I want to hear about this day.
Do people still call them slacks? Is that a thing?
For
I thought.
comedic effect.
Are they slacks if they're part of his suit?
They have a pleat fold down the center. They are slacks.
And a little ankle too, which is difficult when it's 57 degrees out.
No,
but,
it's not.
Oh, it's I'm
It's so nice out right
toughing it
now.
out.
Mike was just complaining about his
Toughing it
tires losing air pressure because of
Am
the
I the
cold.
only one?
It's
Am I the
not
only one?
cold.
Am I the only one that lost 5 psi in each tire? How does that happen?
I lost it too. I did.
57 degrees.
And then you drive to work and somehow a few more creep back up. It's like, there's 3
Science.
It's 57 degrees, Jim.
Yeah. So after this show, got a couple meetings, and I'm going to do my friends over at Kane's Insight are live for National Signing Day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., which really for the Canes this year is not going to be a great signing day.
I thought
no
they
real
got the
surprises.
quarterback from Georgia for now.
Oh, yeah, they got Luke Nickel. They're guys that are committed. We lost a couple guys to Florida. Man, Florida is killing it. All the buyout money that they had saved up in their coffers for Billy Napier, they are spending on NIL, and they're credit to them. They are riding a lot of positive momentum right now. But we'll be covering that till 5 p.m., and then I got to go do a Basel thing. So wearing these pants, these slacks, all day long.
Who calls them slacks? Because I thought it was just my dad. I thought it was people my dad's
I'm
age.
certain when Greg gets here, he will agree with your dad and call them slacks.
Put it on the poll, Juju. Do people call them slacks? Because I'm not sure about that. Have you guys all been running into this traffic yet? Because what is Miami, you can look it up. It is, however it is they measure these things empirically, it is past Los Angeles as a bad traffic town, however it is they do those measurements. Jessica has felt that for a while down here. It hasn't always been like that, but do you feel it now? Because I don't want to go anywhere. Like, I don't want to go anywhere that is, 12 blocks away because of how congested everything is.
It's Basel, boat show weekend, and spring break. Don't leave your block. Stay home. And that's what I intend to do.
Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the walking. Dress too sharp with the prize. White girls let it tell me I'm awesome. Yeah, hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the sheets. You came for one man, forget my peace. You take the west side, take on the east. I'ma put him in the cage, never let out the. Yeah, I hear him chat to the noise. Move too quick, can't stop for the talking. I hear him chat with the boys. Man so tough when mans keep walking. Yeah, just too sharp with the prize. White girls, let it tell me I'm awesome. Yeah, hot like fire on the pan. If you wanna touch my please use caution. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that.
I'll get into National Signing Day in a second because I'm really surprised, Stugotz, that since the days when we have mocked this stuff,
Yes.
we have now become this stuff that we used to mock in terms of the trafficking in high schoolers that was such an obsession when Joe Bucksbaum was a regular on sports radio. In fact, can you find me a clip? There's a clip somewhere of one of these experts being faked out by a show that was just asking about fake high school prospects, and then the expert went into whatever the spiel was on a player that didn't exist. But I have wanted to talk to Jessica for the last couple of days, wanted her here because she gets 200-yard interception returns to get her into the playoffs clearly to defeat USC, but also she has the added joy of seeing, miraculously, amazingly, the very first time the playoff system goes to a professional format that is 12 teams and allows more than any, as Miami does all of the things before the season that would have been considered a successful season, if not for the way that this ended in disaster, so that, correct me if I'm wrong, Miami's the only team anyone's really arguing about. Miami is in the spot where they're the 13th team, where the argument is about Miami or Alabama. But most people listening this would say if the playoff were somehow 13 teams, that Miami would likely be in. Or is there someone else being argued about more than Miami?
Well, I don't know if anyone's arguing more than Miami because they're the first team out right now, but I would like to posit you this team, which I don't think is getting enough arguments on their behalf. BYU. Yep. What's that about? 18? BYU 10-2. Mm-hmm. They beat SMU early in the season.
Yep.
They lost to a really hot Kansas team and to a potential conference champion ASU team late in the year. Finished the season with a win this past weekend, but they're totally out of it now. How about that?
I wanted to talk to you about how good Notre Dame is or isn't.
Let's do that first. Okay. So here's the thing, Dan. I was at my parents' house for Thanksgiving. My parents both went to Notre Dame. They're big fans. Watching football games with them, very stressful. My dad is very loud. He claps aggressively. He screams aggressively. Every time he claps, my dog jumps up and freaks out. The game, I wouldn't say it was like necessarily super stressful. Notre Dame had a 7-point lead for most of the second half, but there was a point where On offense, Notre Dame had stalled out slightly. They had a pretty bad 3-and-out late in the fourth
USC
quarter.
was playing with was in your field position playing for the tie. They were playing for the tie with one of those interception returns.
Correct.
On their side of the field.
And they were picking on Christian Gray, one of the Notre Dame cornerbacks, for the whole game. He had gotten a couple pass interference penalties. He had a really great pass breakup at one point, but it was an up-and-down rocky game for him. Mayava throws it in his direction. He picks it off, runs it back for a 99-yard touchdown. Notre Dame goes up 2 touchdowns now in the fourth quarter. The very next drive, USC throws another 100-yard pick six to Xavier Watts, the reigning Bronco Nagurski Trophy winner. He runs it back for 100 yards. Notre Dame has of the 4 longest touchdown interception returns in school history. 2 of them were in that game and back-to-back
2
plays.
of them were in the last couple of minutes.
And it was like the craziest thing because at one point in the game, so on the Christian Gray penalty, Mayava got called on a low block, so there was a flag, and my mom thought that the touchdown got called back, and she was complaining like, why didn't that touchdown count? And I was like, look at the score bug, it counted. They added 7 points to the score. And she's like, why didn't it count? Why didn't it count? And we were screaming at each other. And then my dad was like, be nice to your mother. And I was like, no, you've been acting like an asshole this whole game.
Whoa.
You're an asshole.
Wow.
You're freaking out my dog. No. You won't stop. You've been maniacally putting up Christmas decorations while you've been screaming for 3 effing hours. Don't tell me I'm an asshole. You're an asshole. And then he's like, no, be nice to your mom. And I was like, where do you think I get it from? I'm like this because of you.
Oh, wow.
He was like, you know what? You're right. And he put down his sword and he's like, you're right. I am a bad example. And then we all made up, and then we all booked our flights to South Bend for the playoff game.
That's nice.
In 2 weeks.
Jess,
the holidays.
Tense. It was tense.
Jess, you mentioned Christian Gray, and in doing the oral history, we got to put together some supercuts, and I totally forgot about when we had Boppy read passages from 50 Shades of Grey. Have you ever heard this, Jess?
No, I've never heard this.
Would you like to?
Yes.
And now, Boppy reads a passage from 50 Shades of Grey, page 121.
I want you sore, baby, he murmurs, and he continues his sweet, leisurely torment, backward, forward. Every time you move tomorrow, I want you to be reminded that I have been here, only me. You are mine.
I can't tell you how not funny that is to me.
So good.
We have about a dozen.
Play them all.
One more? One more? One more. And now, Boppy reads a passage from 50 Shades of Grey, page 75.
His lips are parted. He's waiting, coiled to strike. Desire, acute, liquid, and smoldering, combusts deep in my belly.
I think that's enough.
I kind of want to hear more.
One more.
Liquid and smoldering?
It's bad writing, Dan.
I mean, page 69, I think.
That is not what is bad about this for me.
And now, Boppy reads a passage from 50 Shades of Grey, page 437.
He's naked, except for those soft-ripped jeans. Top buttons casually undone. Jeez, he looks so freaking hot. My subconscious is frantically fanning herself, and my inner goddess is swaying and writhing to some primal carnal rhythm.
Oh my God, I forgot that in that book he has like, pardon my language, but Christian Gray has like fucking jeans. Yeah. Like they're the jeans that he fucks in.
Yeah.
Slacks.
Slacks.
And now,
Thank you.
Boppy reads a passage from 50 Shades of Grey, page 355.
I still want more. I whisper. I know, he says. I will try. I'll blink up at him, and he relinquishes my hand and pulls at my chin, releasing my trap lip. For you, Anastasia, I will try.
What you've just conjured is something that I haven't thought about in about 47 years, which is the time that I was very scared in my childhood. I didn't want to sleep in my own room. I snuck into my parents' room. I snuck in under their bed. And something started happening that I didn't really have.
Baby.
Yeah, I was 36 years old.
47 years ago?
Big Poppy.
That's why bending over hurts so much.
It's very unpleasant what you have just done there in terms of just conjuring sort of when you move things in an attic or basement that haven't been moved a lot and there's like dust and cobwebs and stuff. You just did that around a memory that's horrifying to me that I had buried like deep, deep down.
And now, Poppy reads a passage from 50 Shades of Grey, page 69. Nice.
I grab the bag and dart into the bathroom, away from the unnerving proximity of naked Christian. Michelangelo's David has nothing on him. In the bathroom, it is all hot and steamy. I strip off my clothes and quickly clamber into the shower, anxious to be under the cleansing stream of water. It cascades over me, and I haul up my face into the welcoming torrent. I want Christian Grey. I want him badly. Simple fact. For the first time in my life, I want to go to bed with a man. I want to feel his hands and his mouth on me.
Those last two sentences were not necessary.
Just
They were in
reading the
there, I
book,
swear.
Dan. Yeah,
I mean, it's just different, though. It's not your father.
I heard
okay?
from our bosses on that one.
Did you?
Yeah.
Really?
When are we going to start telling in the oral history all of those stories?
Wait, what did you hear from them? Hey, that was really sexy. Can you do more?
Yeah,
please?
can you do more of those? More of those.
Mike,
More of
I'd
those.
like you to
We'd
come
like
up-
you for middays, is what they told me after I
I'd
played
like you to
this.
come up with a top 5 list of things that you heard about. Things that just people, I don't know about these
I'm
things.
not certain Mike can do that.
I don't know that there. I don't know.
Nothing really touches Fort Wayne, Indiana for me in that phone call. That was something.
I'd like to know more because you shield me from some of this stuff. Greg Cody is now clamoring in. He has missed all of that, thankfully, because otherwise Chris would have had to imagine his own father in some of the same positions that you guys just forced me to imagine my father. But I do have it right that Greg Cody was in yesterday and he called the University of Miami loss an epic embarrassment. And Mike Ryan flip-flopped over the course of 2 days from we deserve to not be in the playoffs because of the epic embarrassment, because you lose 2 out of 3, you lose to Syracuse, you're a big favorite. Nobody regards Syracuse the way Mike regards Syracuse. And then Mike just goes off the deep end yesterday and becomes a shilling ambassador for all things Canes, bought and paid for, integrity in tatters, because, I'm alleging, no one has said this publicly except a hand at the end of the show yesterday, that Mario Cristobal threatened to twist the nipples of Mike Ryan if he didn't get out there and change his tone on things. And so the University of Miami is nationally getting more than BYU is in terms. BYU is suffering because it's not the program name that Miami is, and because Miami conjures, even now still, a certain thing in the country, even though they haven't mattered in football this way for 20 years, the country at large is having a good argument about Miami versus Alabama, correct? Because Alabama got in just because of the regard for the SEC. The same thing that Mike Ryan has been yelling about, which is, I understand that conference is earned reputation, but it hasn't been that this year. It's just echoes and fumes like that everyone in that conference has been proven to be beatable by any number of conferences.
Yeah, you made the argument that Oklahoma State was right there with FSU and Purdue as the worst P4 program. They went winless in their Big 12. They beat Arkansas, a 6-win team that beat Tennessee. So it was what I was fearing. I did find it really interesting, Dan, that last night I was not on the popular side whatsoever, arguing that Miami should be in the playoff. But I guess that was going up against a combined bid of 3 SEC teams. When the dust settled and people realized Alabama is in ahead of Miami, and they remember, hey, 11 days ago, Alabama lost 24-3 to a bad Oklahoma team. They have one more loss, and you hear the rationale from Ward Manuel, which is, well, games against teams with a better than 500 record, Alabama is much better. Well, that's a convenient thing to cherry pick. First off, these teams are pretty close. A good tiebreaker would be wins and losses, but we're not going to do that. Fine. What about the teams that are at 500, Ward? What's Alabama's record there? And over the night, I'm really surprised that I guess people just really hate Alabama more than they hate Miami because it feels like the nation's starting to realize, hold up, that Oklahoma loss. Wait, Miami's loss to Syracuse to bring them to 2 losses on the year? We're going to punish that more than we're going to punish Alabama's loss to a really bad Oklahoma team?
I think that Alabama gets the benefit of the doubt because they've proven this season that their ceiling is higher because they've beaten Georgia. And Miami hasn't gotten the chance to play a team like Georgia, and they haven't gotten a chance to beat a team like Georgia. So automatically, Alabama is getting slotted ahead of them because of that. And
Georgia did lose all my respect with that Georgia Tech game, though.
Yeah, but I don't think
Georgia Tech's good, dude. That's what I've been trying to argue.
No, but all I'm saying is that if Georgia Tech can beat Georgia. If Georgia Tech can beat Georgia, then you can't make a convincing...
They can't because they can't score 2 points. That was so frustrating to watch. Brent Key lost all of my respect in that game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was so pathetic to watch. He didn't know the rules. He put up a 1 in the second overtime. You can't kick an extra point in the second overtime. Learn the rules. My God.
Watching that game at a bar on mute was really confusing, watching Brent Key go through that. But it's actually pretty unfortunate because I was really invested in that ACC-SEC matchup on Friday, and it turns out that could be the reason why Miami is out. Georgia Tech blowing the 14-point lead and all those calls that went Georgia's way there. Because if Georgia loses that game, Alabama's big signature win that everyone says, okay, well, that's their ceiling. They've proven that they can match it, becomes really diluted. And then the loss to Georgia Tech, all of a sudden Miami's got 2 losses, both to ranked teams. I understand the Alabama argument. They showed what their ceiling could be. Unfortunately for Miami, they didn't get an opportunity to. Here's another tiebreaker that I've been told that the CFP usually considers, and that's common opponents. All right, so you have a Miami team that has a better record than Alabama. They both played a USF team. I know September does not exist in the eyes of the SEC, but in September, they both played USF. Who looked better against USF? Clearly, Miami did. So it's unfortunate that we just keep shifting the barometers in which we do this.
But what was the final score of the Alabama-USF game?
No, I understand how they pulled away.
It was like 42-14 or something.
But was it? I know Miami looked much better, and the final score was much better.
Well, now we're
against
going
USF.
down to like how much better did they look quarter to quarter to quarter, which I think is different. I also don't think Georgia Tech would be ranked if they beat Georgia because
you don't think so? There were others receiving votes.
There were others receiving votes. I'm just saying I'm not 100% sure. They might sneak in, but I'm not 100% sure.
Look, I think ultimately I'm trying to rationalize. I know why Miami's out. Miami is out because they blew a 21-point lead to Syracuse. It's a huge bummer for me in that Miami, if I told you before the season, as you alluded to, Dan, you're going to go 10-2, and you're going to lose 2 games to Georgia Tech and Syracuse, which are games that I looked at the schedule. I'm like, yeah, those are tricky spots inside this conference. And you're going to lose those games by a combined 9 points. And you're not going to get into Charlotte, and subsequently you're not going to get into the CFP. And you're going to have a Heisman finalist. You're going to have the top offense in the nation. This season should feel a lot better than it does right now. And that's a huge bummer because Miami pretty much did all the right things except hold on to a big lead.
Stop being a homer,
Mike.
I thought that was pretty calm and rational. I thought I did well. You just were sitting on that one,
Yeah,
huh?
I had the sound. I got it.
But as it relates to Miami and Alabama, this is about the Alabama wins, is it not? I mean, they beat Georgia, they beat South Carolina, they beat LSU at a time LSU was ranked in the top 10.
Don't do the LSU trick. Like, that infuriates me. Like, they all get fat on LSU inexplicably being ranked in the mid-teens, and then everybody beats up on LSU and takes credit for it. I guess a big win is huge. Yeah, it's wonderful. They lost to Vanderbilt and they lost to Oklahoma, and they didn't just lose to Oklahoma. They got figured out.
I want to talk about that in a second, but Jessica, you wanted to get in here.
I think, Mike, at the end of the day, there's 2 things you should be angry about. One, obviously, blowing a 21-point lead against Syracuse and then kicking a field goal down 7 at the end of the game. Those are things that you should be mad about. Second, Stanford. Yep. Let me tell you why. Yeah. Because Stanford beat Louisville in the dumbest way possible. I guess you should really be mad at Louisville, but mostly Stanford, because screw them and screw their stupid tree. They beat Louisville in this dumb career-high field goal at the end of the game because Louisville got an unsportsmanlike penalty and put them in field goal range, and then they jumped off sides, and it was so stupid. And they also beat Syracuse inexplicably at the beginning of the season. Stanford is bad, okay? And Stanford is single-handedly the reason that there's not more ACC teams ranked right now. So screw Stanford. Who decided to let Stanford into Oh, I guess that would be Miami and all the
Yeah,
other ACC
all the other schools and SMU.
Damn it!
And it's kind of funny for me to argue, man, this conference is really hard when SMU just strolls into it and goes to the conference championship in its first year.
Almost like that American Athletic Conference was pretty competitive for the last several years.
This guy's just
No
been
one's
waiting.
thinking about you right now, dude. No one's thinking about
I
you.
love your transitive property argument. It's my favorite.
Well, I think, look, Mizzou was inexplicably ranked at several points in this season. You give Mizzou's resume to Duke, Duke is still unranked. Duke should have been ranked, but look, these are all based on preseason rankings. Most of these riders are bought and paid for when it comes to their job, depending on the SEC working out. And Miami just ran into that kind of buzzsaw. They had an opportunity there for themselves, up 21-0. They blew it. It's a damn shame because Miami is a really fun team to watch. Best offense in the nation. Only lost 2 games by combined 9 points. You'd think that'd be good enough. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It's a huge bummer, and this season should feel better to me, but it doesn't.
I will tell you again, it's a made-for-television event, and while I would want to watch the best offense in the sport and Cam Ward play one more game, the nation will have its regard for Alabama, and there's a whole generation that doesn't have any understanding that Miami used to be good. An entire generation, 20 years. So Alabama is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award on a made-for-television event because the argument I would make, and Jessica, you tell me if you think I have this wrong, because at the time that Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame, I said to myself, even not knowing anything because it was too early in the season, okay, that's a giant upset. That's probably the biggest upset there's going to be in the sport this year, winning at Notre Dame. It was the most confusing result of the season, but it was so early that I'm like, okay, well, Notre Dame must not be good if that's happening. I still don't have a sample on who everyone is. I've got a sample on Alabama, and the most confusing result to me this season, I didn't see the game. How the hell did Alabama lose that way to Oklahoma? How was the offense neutralized? What don't I know about the importance of Nick Saban's coaching that would make it so that Alabama and that quarterback, that Milroe wouldn't be able to do anything in a game against a terrible Oklahoma team? Where were the most confusing results of the season? Because that one I just didn't understand. And it was so recent that I can't believe they got forgiven for it, even though Alabama's been forgiven for any number of losses over the last few years, just because people know to put them on television.
I mean, I completely agree with you about the Oklahoma game. I think that like we talked about Alabama's ceiling being they can beat Georgia. Their floor is a lot lower than it's been in the last 10 years because that game was really bad. 3 points against Oklahoma at the end of the season is a just horrendous offensive output for Alabama, for any team. But I think that Alabama may not make it, right? Because if Clemson wins, SMU is probably going to get the spot. Clemson's going to get the bye week probably with the ACC championship game. So Alabama may not make it. And I think, and I could be totally wrong about this, but I think that if you explain to an Alabama fan you didn't make it because of the Oklahoma loss, they're probably going to nod their head and be like, you know what? That makes sense. Just like if you told me in September, or, I guess like the better example is like if Notre Dame lost to USC this past weekend, Notre Dame goes into that game knowing they're playing Southern Cal on the road. It's their rival. If they lose, they're not going to make the playoff at 10-2 because they have the Northern Illinois loss. And if you told me that and it happened, I would agree with you. Notre Dame should not make the playoff as a 2-loss team with the Northern Illinois loss. But they went into that game knowing we have to win, and we're in because this will be an 11-1 season. There's not enough 11-win teams to overcome that. And so this is a win and you're in situation. It's the same thing for Miami playing at Syracuse. Miami knew they had to win that conference game to make the ACC championship game. It was a play-in game for the playoff, and Miami had the lead. They had a chance to tie it late in the game, and they couldn't finish it. And that's, I think, the difference between 11-1, 10-2, and 9-3 right there.
Yeah, but I also think is that people were watching the end of that game, and people must not have been watching what happened in Oklahoma, Alabama, because you can't know what happened in that game and say to me that that's a team that deserves to be among the 12 best.
Yeah, but you can watch them play against Georgia and Tennessee and LSU and say that team could win the national championship.
They move the goalposts because it's convenient. It's convenient when September doesn't matter. And part of the argument that Lucy was making on behalf of the SEC, I think she was arguing more for South Carolina. I think we all know that South Carolina's out because they lost to Alabama, and that confuses the process. Because head-to-head has to matter. Alabama beat Georgia in September. What they did recently was put up 3 points against one of the worst Oklahoma teams of our lifetime. That happened 11 days ago. And
they also beat Mercer.
They also beat, so they climb up 3 spots because they beat Mercer, and they beat an Auburn team by 2 scores, I guess. Like, it's a bummer. It's a huge bummer, but we knew that if it got into a situation where you're parsing the difference between Alabama and Miami, Alabama's going to win that tiebreaker because of all the SEC stuff. And it's a damn shame because Miami had it there for them. All they had to do was hold on to that lead. And ultimately, that is probably going to haunt me for years. Because that quarterback was a unicorn. This offense was one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen in the history of college football. Not Miami football. That's a certainty. Not the best in the nation. That's a certainty. One of the best of all time. It's a huge bummer that we don't get to see Cam Ward play again.
It should haunt you for years, and it should haunt Mario Cristobal for years, because they blew it, Miami. Right? Like I want to have righteous indignation on behalf of Miami. They should be ranked ahead of Alabama. And you can make a good argument that, their only 2 losses were by 9 points to good teams. That's true, but the timing of those losses was disastrous, an absolute disaster. When they blew that 21-point lead, they had no chance. There's no room. I want to have righteous indignation on behalf of Miami. It's very, very difficult the way that season ended.
I think we can all agree on this. The problem is not Miami, Alabama. The problem is Boise State. Why do we need Boise State or a team like Boise State in the playoff? I want Alabama. I want Miami. I want Alabama, Notre Dame first round. I want Miami, Georgia first round. I don't want to see Boise State.
No one
wants to see
What
Boise.
if it's Army instead? What if Army is the G5 team?
Yes.
That's different.
Thank you for your service.
You don't want to see Genty? You don't want to see Genty?
That's going to be a great game.
Mike, you're not listening to me. What I want to see is Miami and Alabama. I don't care about Genty. That's what I want to see.
But Boise State.
You should.
Well, we'll see if Boise State. UNLV is very good and has every opportunity to win that game this weekend. But right now, Boise State has 1 loss. It was a 6-point loss. Oregon needed 2 returns for a touchdown to win that game. Like they very could have easily beaten Oregon. Their 1 loss is to the number 1 team in the nation.
Ashton Genty, statistically, the type of season he's having, he has more yards after contact rushing this year than anyone else has rushing yards in the country, period.
You should want to watch him.
Also,
I don't care about watching him. I'll watch the highlight package. They're going to have a bye the first week of the playoffs. That's absurd.
They might not.
If the Pac-12 didn't explode in the last year, they would probably be the 5th conference to get a bid into the playoff. So this is all just sort of a mess because it's all happening at once. But I just disagree with you fundamentally because I think there should be a path for a super talented top 25 G5 team to make it in, or multiple some years if one of the power conferences has a really down year. But I guess going back to Miami versus Alabama, I think that if the Syracuse game is a touchdown for touchdown shootout and Miami gets left out, and Miami still loses, of course. I understand the frustration there, but the fact that they had the 3 touchdown lead is so brutal, and the fact that Mario botched the ending so badly yet again. Someone sent me this on Blue Sky. They said the committee was afraid to see what kind of clock management Mario could be capable of in a playoff game, and that's why Miami was left out. And I think they're kidding, but I also think there might be some truth to it.
There is.
This guy has proven he cannot handle the end of game situations time and time again.
I would push back on that because Miami was in plenty of close games, and Mario Cristobal pushed all the right buttons all season long. And honestly, I reached out to some NFL people that crunched the numbers, and they say that was a 50-50 proposition. Your defense needs to stop them either way. I think the conventional wisdom is if you fail from the 12-yard line on that 4th and goal, Syracuse is a little bit more conservative, and you have a better shot at stopping them. But Syracuse was conservative when they got the ball back, and Miami couldn't stop them. Ultimately,
how much time went off the clock, though, before the field goal kick? That was the other part of it, though. It was just a slow, non-urgent.
I actually don't remember that part. I might have blacked out.
The other part of that, though, because
trot.
you're talking about
I don't blame you for
the
that.
late game situation there, the reason I would have gone for it on 4th and goal, because people assume if you get an incompletion there, you're still giving them the ball at the 10-yard line. No, I'm calling a play that gets me even closer to the goal line if I get the completion, so that perhaps I've got the possibility of them starting from their own 1 or their 2 or their 3.
Right. My frustration is look at what we're talking about here instead of losing to Oklahoma 24-3. Jess, I'm just curious, like, what would you have done if the decision were up to you? Would you have gone with like South Carolina? Like,
No,
who would you have put in?
It's really tough because
BYU.
I think you're right about South Carolina because Alabama has the head-to-head. I don't think you can put them ahead of Alabama. And Ole Miss, I think general consensus is the Kentucky loss was disqualifying. This was a really, really bad Kentucky team.
Plus, they
only won
lost to Florida
4
at
games.
Florida, and Miami blew
Right.
Florida out.
But they also did blow out Georgia. So I understand their argument for it. I think of the 3, I get putting Alabama ahead of those 2. When it comes down to Alabama and Miami, I mean, yeah, it's tough. Like Syracuse, they're ranked, but they're a team that has played in some really big stinkers this season that Miami should have beaten. Same thing with Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is a good team, but Miami still should have beaten them. And the way that Miami's schedule worked out, there just wasn't a chance for them to really prove it in.
So you would have put Bama in?
I don't know. I mean,
You look me in the face while you break
how much
my heart.
how much does the committee get paid for this? Because if you give me that amount of money and also a weekend in at the Gaylord in Dallas, then maybe I'll give you my answer. But I'm not doing it for free. I'm not going to tell you it for free.
I mean, when we're talking about how teams are playing late in the year, we're skipping over the fact that Syracuse only beat UConn by a touchdown the week before that they beat Miami. I mean, so when we're talking about, how did Alabama or Miami look against USF for parts of quarters? Like, Syracuse barely beats UConn. I mean, we're not talking about a team that or an ACC conference.
Why is
24-3.
USF a measuring stick?
Well, right.
Well,
Well, that's kind of my point, right? We're talking about opponents.
Right.
I mean,
It's one of the tiebreakers that they use.
Mike, I get why the
but
ACC.
24-3, dude.
I understand that, and look, it's a bad loss, but I think the committee has shown us year after year after year after year they care more about good wins than just wins. Like
They
what
care
they
about good
consider
wins
to
more
be-
than losses.
Yeah, I know.
Like, 'cause
Trust
Miami has
me, I'm
fewer
aware.
than them.
Trust me, I'm aware. And the idea of the ACC and the SEC and the comparison. Look, you said it yourself. A team that was in the American Athletic Conference last year walked into the ACC and was their best team. And so, as much as I really like a lot of the ACC teams, and there are arguments to be made that the gap has gotten closer because of the transfer portal, etc. The reality is the SEC is still a tier above. SMU would not have walked into the SEC and had the type of season that they just did.
I mean, I just saw Texas do it, and I understand Texas is a very good team.
Texas, not
but
SMU.
Look, Georgia should have lost that game to Georgia Tech. They still would have been in the SEC championship. Unranked Texas A&M was a game away from being in the SEC championship. SMU strolls into Charlotte in large part due to the toughest team they played in the conference was Louisville. You had this situation with 3 teams.
Is that no different than Miami?
Well, no. What I'm saying, it's a byproduct of not having divisions, and
Sure.
it's unfortunate because Indiana cracked the code. Indiana's not playing really good teams inside of their conference, and they only get to have 1 loss
Well, that's not
despite
true.
only
They
playing.
did have to play Michigan, who did beat Ohio State. So
Yeah.
I think also,
We are in the mud.
I wonder how much the close games against Virginia Tech and Cal ended up mattering at the end of the day for Miami as well, because Cal.
What about at the start of the day?
One of the worst teams at the start of the day. Good win against Florida.
But again, like we're bringing up the Cal game when we're ignoring 24-3.
I'm not ignoring that. I'm telling you, if Alabama gets left out, I totally agree with it. You're just arguing about who's ahead of who this week,
but
and I understand that.
I miss the BCS.
Here's what's happening here to me that's so funny, and I can't believe it's the Miami team that gives us this gift. Like, you guys are sitting here trying to make arguments based on merit as if merit matters. Like, to me, it's fascinating that we keep doing this stupidity when the point of this particular season is the argument. Like, it's not about the merit. So you come at me with the timing of this was disaster. Timing is not about merit. How good is your football team? Timing. You're coming at me with how it looks that they lost with a 21-point lead and the 4th and goal and the botched ending at Syracuse. The merit is, what are their records and what have they done against the others? Unless, when you got a bunch of murkiness, you can just make it a made-for-television event, and everybody would prefer to have Alabama, even as we make the arguments on behalf of Miami because we're myopic and because we love Cam Ward and this generational team that isn't as television friendly as Alabama is, because a whole generation has watched Alabama be great at football that hasn't seen Miami be great at football.
Tone.
I think Alabama is getting huge merit points for beating Georgia, who may end up being the SEC champion. So I get your point. I think the Oklahoma loss is a very valid reason to leave them out of the playoff. No matter what happened this year, we are always going to argue about the teams on the bubble, whether it was the 12 seed, the 11 seed, the 13th ranked team, whatever. Like
you guys.
Dan, if Alabama lost to Georgia and beat Oklahoma, I don't think they'd have a great case to get in. I think Miami would be in. I think that they are just getting a ton of credit for beating who will probably be the SEC champion if they are able to win again against Texas.
Which is why I argued if Miami's in the Big Ten or SEC, Miami has a similar year. Their 2 losses are probably considered better losses, and they actually have the opportunity, because Miami certainly has a team that is certainly capable of beating the likes of Georgia or,
I think
needed that
you guys didn't have the ability. The sigh from Greg Cody there. I don't think that you guys had the ability during the course of this segment to make me long for my father talking about 50 Shades of Grey, but you managed it.
And now, Bobby reads a passage from 50 Shades of Grey, page 487.
These clamps are vicious. He prods the nipple clamps. We will use these. They're adjustable. Christian, my sexual mentor. My mouth is already open from panting. I open wider and he slides a large cool metal object between my shaped like an oversized baby pacifier. It has a small groove or carvings. I'm going to put this His fingers trail between my buttocks, spreading oil. Instantly, the plug starts to vibrate. Down there, it feels alien, full, forbidden, but oh, so good. As my body explodes, I'm nothing but sensation everywhere.
All right, I want to apologize to the audience, okay? Because every once in a while, we forget who we are around here, and we become a sports radio show arguing about sports, and we forget that Greg Cody has gotten here, and his hair is crazy, and he came in traffic. He didn't have any time for makeup, and Greg Cody's got a microphone, and he's got a thermos, and he's ready to talk. And he hasn't been allowed to talk because there's been a sports argument breaking out about college football, which is exactly what college football wants. It's a wonderful thing to have around your sport, much better than flag planting arguments that we've been having for 2 days. But once you get to telling me some guy named Ward Manuel, the University of Michigan AD.
Perfect name.
Some guy, yeah, perfect, just perfect. Like if I tell you, having seen the evolution of college football into the seismic thing that it is today, get me please that video of the left tackle for Colorado showing off a Maybach because he protects the blind side of Shedeur Sanders, because I really am just riveted, Stugotz, riveted by the professionalization of this sport, where now everybody realizes what once upon a time was the secret domain, and Cody will laugh at this, of these people in bowl committees who were the owner of your local car dealership, who would put on a loud jacket and come to our press box to eat hot dogs, and God damn it, they ran the sport.
Yes.
They knew, oh my God, I could get Tostitos to just do an infomercial, put the name on the Fiesta Bowl, and I'm going to strip clubs and steakhouses all over America. They ran the sport. Now everybody sees that they had all the money. The guys with the loud jackets who would show up in your press box and be big shots for a weekend. Look, I'm walking into sports, and I'm going to have some of your free media cookies, and I'm going to sit in the back row, and I'm going to watch the game. And you're going to think I'm an important person. They ran the sport for 30 years. They became commissioners. They became people named Ward. And now they've got all the money. Play this video for me of Shedeur Sanders. But the players and Deion Sanders realize, oh, this is the second most popular sport in America. And now the left tackle for Colorado, I can't even imagine what Texas and Ohio State are doing. But the left tackle for Colorado has a Maybach. Can you guys get me some information, please, on the Maybach and how much it costs? I mean, I know Joe Burrow bought a $3 million Batmobile. But I'd like to know more. Yeah, Joe Burrow just bought one of the 10 Christopher Nolan cars. Right? There were only 10 made. It's not street legal, right? But it is.
Can't be. Who's manufacturing this car? This was a revelation from AFC North Hard Knocks last night on HBO Max. Oh my God, what an episode!
I'm seeing that the Maybach runs from anywhere from $200K to $240K.
Yeah, reasonable.
Put it on the poll, please, at Le Batard Show. Juju, is $200 to $240K reasonable to pay for a car? Yes or no?
You got to do that on a 3-year lease, right? I mean,
well, what is that vehicle you just showed?
It's the Batmobile. How do you not recognize the Batmobile?
Because it looks like a car that's just been in a horrific traffic accident.
I agree with Greg. Yes, that does not look like the original Batmobile. I mean,
it's the modern one. If you've seen any of the recent movies, it's the current one.
Awful.
It's ugly. Yeah.
Just terrible.
You think the Batmobile is terrible?
I think what I just saw looks like a car that's just been through a wreck.
My dad's picturing like the 90s one where it's like
the original one.
It kind of looks like a Corvette, which my dad loves.
Is that
Corvettes.
like a Coupe de Ville? What is the original Batmobile? It's got like the thingies on the back, right?
Well, the original Batmobile was sleek. It had sleek lines. This is just a
tank.
Chaos on wheels, that one.
Okay, let's play Joe Burrow here, the sound of him. This is a $3 million automobile. I'd like to get your review of Hard Knocks, but here's Joe Burrow telling his teammates, like, that's a pretty cool thing, right? Joe Burrow's already pretty cool. To be able to afford and to actually buy one of only 10 Christopher Nolan fans, if you're a Batman fan, let's hear Joe Burrow.
Told you I bought an automobile.
Did you get it yet, though?
I don't get it for like a year, but I bought it.
The roof. That's gonna be crazy. That's gonna be crazy. You gotta go to the Ventures Batman where he had the ass eye thing on.
I think I gotta go all in and go for like the expensive bat.
The suit and all. That's gonna be funny as hell, though. I ain't gonna lie. That's gonna be hilarious. How about that with a cape-on, bro?
What if I wore it to every game? I just wore the full bat suit, Batmobile to every game. If I go crazy on Halloween,
what? I mean, yeah.
Then
I would be like, yeah, whatever. Getting to, yeah.
507 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I wear it again.
I wear that to the club.
We're being told that it's not street legal, though. He just said in there that he might drive it to the game in a bat suit. So I don't know if he's able to do that. That would be fun.
Are you a co-op?
I mean, he can do it illegally. He's Joe Burrow.
Right.
Like you think Joe Burrow? Kobe Bryant used to park wherever he wanted to in Los Angeles. Like he'd just park, and people knew it was Kobe's car. He would just all the
probably
spots,
said Kobe on it, the license plate.
All the spots, like Kobe could do that all over Los Angeles. Let's discuss this for a second. At Le Batard Show, these are some of the questions. Does Joe Burrow become cooler when he buys the Batmobile? Because Greg Cody's saying it looks like a bad car. I'm like, that's a gangster move he just made. Like the idea, it is so hard these days as an athlete, if you want to show all the other athletes that you have more style than them with your automobile, like it's pretty hard to do. And he just landed one of 10 cars. And so I thought it made him cooler, but I'd like to get on a guest who can tell me more about this car. I'd like Sullivan to chase someone down because I'd like to know what this purchase is if it's 30 times more than a Maybach. Because there can't be many people in the world who are buying these cars, but I want to know who they are.
I feel like this is just a Joe Burrow is cool thing. Like if Russell Wilson does this, aren't we like laughing at it a little bit?
We mock him, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Joe
point.
Burrow can't do anything that's not cool.
I think that's a bad look for Joe Burrow.
A bad look?
That's a bad look for Joe Burrow, and it falls under the category less car buying, more winning.
Yep.
When you're the
He's playing so well.
Okay,
no, but focus on W's, Dan.
When you're the quarterback, there are two teams in the NFL that have had monstrously disappointing seasons.
You tell them.
San Francisco and the Batmobile owners team. And it's just a bad look to be on Hard Knocks talking about your car when your team is in the tank. I just think it's a bad look.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm trying to think through like a Batman Joe Burrow analogy here because Batman, like, he fights crime, he tries to do all this good, but like it's a drop in the bucket, right? Like the bad stuff keeps happening. Joe Burrow, he throws all these touchdowns, but the defense just keeps letting the other team score over and over again. And I mean, there are some similarities there in the futility of it all.
But you can't drive away, to Greg's point, from the stadium after another loss in that car.
Really?
You just can't do it.
Can you, though, as the league leader in passing yards and
No.
passing touchdowns?
Not when you're 4-9.
It's about winning.
Wait a minute. Wait,
Not stats.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Put it on the poll, Juju, at Le Batard Show. Can Joe Burrow make even losing cool? Because you will not tell me, okay, that if Joe Burrow drives out of that stadium, as he will, illegally, in his street illegal car through a city he owns, through a city where he is the biggest star in the town now and the biggest star in I don't know how long, maybe the biggest star Cincinnati has ever had outside of Pete Rose. Like Pete Rose was a fan of Joe Burrow's. You will not tell me that guy will leave a stadium leading the league in passing yards and touchdowns, and that street cop Stugotz will stop him on the way out of the gates in his Batmobile and say, "You, sir, are not cool. You can't leave this way. You don't have style. Your team has 4 wins."
I would say you, sir, are 4-10.
Yes. I mean, look, Joe Burrow, if his team were 10-2, he would be the MVP favorite right now.
Yes.
Based on statistics. But they're not. Okay, the Batmobile, based on the season he's having, the Batmobile should be backfiring and have 2 flat tires. It's just a bad look for him because you want to go, really, you're 5 and what are you? You're 4-8, whatever their record is?
In the last 3 games, he's thrown for more than 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 1 interception in the last 3 games, and they're 0-3.
I know. The weird thing is we judge football by wins and losses, not by stats.
Not all of us do it that way.
Maybe we should just decide to put them in the playoff because
I think we
should. Yes.
Put it on the poll.
Absolutely.
Really
Good losses.
Put it on the poll, Juju, at Le Batard Show. Should Joe Burrow by himself be the 12th team in the playoff? Because I'd take it in his Batmobile. Just have Joe Burrow wandering around smoking cigars.
Are we, Greg? So let's say Jamar Chase has the Batmobile.
Right.
There's only so much he can do, right, as a wide receiver. Like, is this just a thing for Joe Burrow, or can a really good wide receiver on a losing team drive the Batmobile? Are they allowed to do that?
Look, I think it's a bad look to be on Hard Knocks in the middle of the season they're having, talking about a $3 million car purchase. Maybe I'm
the fact that you're thinking about that
Right.
while you're going through a 4-8 season and have lost 3 straight. Yes.
I want to give you guys some of the history here because I know Greg Cody knows it. This franchise has been a cheap and national laughingstock for decades before Joe Burrow got there. Marvin Lewis was retained simply because he was spectacularly mediocre for a consistent time. This organization, by all other NFL standards, is laughed at by the other organizations. That was enough to sink Carson Palmer at the end. He's like, get me out of here. I'm not good enough to lift this from the muck. Joe Burrow's out here, Batmobiles, leading the league in passing and touchdowns, and he's losing, but they're not sinking him.
He's so hot.
I mean, they are not killing any of his cool.
You see the mask he put on there?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's
he looks
crazy.
Big.
You can put anything on.
Dan, all we're saying is at 4-8, you show up, nice pair of slacks and a Ford Pinto, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's
there
what
it
you
is.
do.
Thank you.
You're
And then it
4-8.
explodes.
I mean, I don't care how cool you are.
Put it on the poll, please, Juju. At 4-8, do you show up to the stadium in slacks and a Ford Pinto?
Big day for slacks on the show.
They were vindicated, though, right? They weren't actually
Slacks?
No, Ford Pintos. They were the cars that everyone thought were spontaneously combusting. In
I
the
used to
90s.
drive a Ford Pinto. It's a beautiful brown one. Yeah, one of my earliest cars. I'm a Pinto fan. Don't get me started.
Did it have a name? Do you name your cars?
I do not name my cars, no.
You never named your car.
Never named my car.
But he does do the thing where when he sees another of his cars out there, he like waves.
Yeah, we have a wave.
You're saying hi?
Yeah.
Yeah, to an old friend. Yeah.
I'm always ready to wave because I never want to be the first one to wave, but I'm always ready if the other guy waves. You know.
I believe that's your whole approach to friendship. You have never made a phone call to me in your life like
well,
that.
I mean, let's not get carried away.
So when you say don't get me started, though, I'm going to call your bluff on this. I think you're bluffing. I'm going to get you started. Tell me everything, please. I want to get you started on the Ford Pinto, your Ford Pinto.
It was my second car. Okay, my first car was a souped-up Buick Skylark with big fat racing tires. It had an aluminum block motor, and I ran it through a big giant puddle and ruined the motor. My second car was a brown Ford Pinto, which at the time just seemed like I was living large.
How old were you?
I was probably college age.
Ah, so nice.
Well, shag and wagon.
I mean, a big back seat, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Ford Pinto. And
You got that part.
Yeah, my third car was an orange Opel station wagon with a mountain scene in the background, in the rear window.
Really?
Yeah, memories.
Delightful.
That sounds gross.
What was your fourth car?
The white van?
I had a couple of Hondas. Yeah, I had
You had a Honda streak
I
going
had two.
on?
Happy Honda Days, by the way, guys.
I owned two Hondas.
are
I owned an
gorgeous.
Accord.
Right.
And what's the lesser one than the Accord?
The Civic, the
The
little
Civic.
one.
I owned a Civic.
So that was my first car.
I upgraded to an Accord. And then I think I got into Corvetteville after that. I'm not sure.
What about the white van?
Oh, yeah, the white van that my mother-in-law accused me of stealing to buy.
She had
What?
She had Alzheimer's.
Yeah, my mother-in-law at that time, she's going through some personal issues. She had, a little bit of dementia there. And one of the things she did was, in the throes of that, was accuse me of stealing money from her.
And she hated you at the end.
Well, and I tried to explain to her, as much as you explain to somebody in that condition, if I'm stealing money from you, it ain't to buy a white Dodge Caravan. Trust me,
Right.
I'm going to be buying
sense,
a Batmobile or a Maybach, not a white Caravan. Anyway, car talk.
That
Fred,
kind of thing.
The only thing on fire in your Pinto was your loins, right?
Yes, exactly. Well put. I would never
Thank you.
say
Well
that.
put, Mike.
No, he was talking to me.
Yeah,
No, I was talking to Mike about the.
Greg's loins were on fire.
So
It
were
was-
Mike's.
Yes.
So
yes,
were Mike's.
yes.
So were Poppy's. Can we play another one?
Do
of
we
those?
have
That's
more
true.
of that? Do we have? I want some more 50 Shades of Grey, and I do just want for my own information, because legit confused and don't have any answers. The 3 points that Alabama put up against Oklahoma. Can you look at the game logs for me, please? Because I don't have recollection of anybody doing anything but running up and down the field on Oklahoma. So please give me some game logs on the point totals that Oklahoma has allowed to others, and then someone explain to me what they did in that game that made Alabama score only 3 points in it 11 days ago, and nobody cares and nobody remembers.
Alabama's offense has been neutralized. Like when a defense is on that offense's ass, it looks like ass. They're limited. Just like when a team is on Miami's defense and knows exactly what to do, attack them in
but
space.
Oklahoma's
they look like
but
ass.
Oklahoma's defense. What I'm asking you is, give me some point totals of what other teams have scored against Oklahoma.
Mississippi scored 26 against Oklahoma. Tennessee scored 25 against Oklahoma. Temple scored 3.
If you're looking for SEC teams, they gave up 21 was the least.
Oklahoma's problem is their head coach and their offense. Their head coach, Brett Venables, Venables' defense, that's a famous thing throughout college football. Like, his defense, if you bring him in, he's going to have a sound defense. Their issues were all along that offense and the fact that
Turnovers.
he runs red all the time.
It was turnovers in the second half. That's what it was. Every time it looked like Alabama was, okay, they're going to score a touchdown here. Turnover. It was interception. I think there was a pick 6 in there.
Yeah, it's exactly how they beat Auburn.
Very controversial call in the fourth quarter that went against Alabama. I mean, it was just a bad offensive game for Alabama. But I'm with Mike. I think Oklahoma's defense is really good. I think that one of the reasons that they've struggled so much is that their offense has been so bad at maintaining possession that their defense has just been on the field a lot this season. It's been a really, really tough season for Oklahoma offensively, and Alabama was not able to contain Oklahoma's offense, which is an insane thing to say, which also contributed to it. But really, Alabama's offense had a really bad game.
And I'm a big fan of the offensive coordinator that they brought in from Washington State, Arbuckle. And if the quarterback follows, that quarterback, not many people watch Washington State this year. I think they were exclusively on the CW. That offense was really, really fun. There wasn't much of a drop-off in terms of quarterback play and offensive output from Cam Ward. So they might fix it on the offensive side next year, but ultimately I think that hiring was a disaster in Venables, and they're going to fire him eventually.
More Poppy, please.
And now, Poppy reads a passage from 50 Shades of Grey, page 78.
Christian trails a spoonful of ice cream down the center of my body, across my stomach and into my navel. He kisses each of my breasts and each of my nipples hard, then follows the line of ice cream down my body and licking as he goes. This way, he murmurs, and abruptly, he's me. He leans over, releases my hands, and pulls me upright so I'm practically sitting on him. He nuzzles my neck, biting down, and he flexes his hips, deliciously, slowly. Again and again, he smiles against my neck, and his fingers curl around my jaw and throat, holding me fast for a moment.
Dan, in 17 years with Nick Saban, Alabama never scored 3 or fewer points.
I'm sorry, Stugotz. I'm disoriented. Nobody warned me that anybody was doing this today. Mike has had a lot of fun with that oral history.
History.
And there is smutty smetty. I have enjoyed the oral history, but I had not remembered any of this for good reason. This is not something that I want to think about. But every time you do this, the ones laughing hardest in here are Greg Cody and Chris Cody. Chris laughing in my face. So, Chris, I'm going to do it to you now, all right? I want to do 50 Shades of Greg.
Oh, God.
Yeah, get me some paperwork around here somewhere. Find me something that Greg can read so I can do this to you so you can see how not funny this is to do when it's your father involved. Like, these things, you have to understand, I have never thought of my father this way.
I never want Greg to have a coughing fit, but if there was ever a good time, it's in the middle of one of these passages.
So get me a couple of passages that would be funny for 50 Shades of Greg, please.
Even the time you were hiding under his bed?
I don't like to remember any
You were
of this.
36.
I know. I don't like to think about any of this. I've got a question for you, too. I need to tell people now before they make all sorts of plans to drive through this Art Basel traffic. You guys were going to have a big night at a church tomorrow night, and then I'm hearing from all sorts of people yesterday on Facebook that the event was canceled. And I thought it was just, some of the stuff that happens around Stugotz where you never know if he's going to show up, and it was a bit. But you guys are now not doing this tomorrow night. The event has been canceled, and I'm assuming it's because of an act of God, and I'm assuming in a church that Stugotz would immediately burst into flames based on just his legacy upon entering a church. So this is what happened.
As I told you earlier, I requested a synagogue, and Greg wanted to watch football.
Yeah.
Okay,
I got the Lions,
all right. Wait a minute.
3,
wait a minute.
Chicken time.
Come on. Come on.
This all seems fishy. It was on yesterday and it's on
Except for
today.
Stugotz.
Come on, whatever
I like that
reason.
chicken.
Man, Stugotz. Come on. Happy Chinooka.
People were excited. We were going to
Love
celebrate a big week of authorship and best-selling and all sorts of things at a church.
But
and
were
then
they excited enough?
Shit happens.
Yeah.
I was worried I was going to be struck by lightning walking into that church. So
Right.
I was nervous about that.
I mean, truth is, the response was so overwhelming, they need to find a bigger venue.
Okay.
I mean,
That's true.
stadium,
You
perhaps.
held out for more money.
Truth is how that sentence started.
Yeah. I have
Thank you.
I have to get to this though because as part of this giant week that Stugotz is having as a publishing giant who didn't read or write his own book but is going to get all the money and the sales from his book, and it's a monster success. The audience has bought tens and tens of thousands of books. So it's been a big week for Stugotz. But on top of that, something we were talking about yesterday is, and this is, God almighty, I just can't believe that this is happening. We found the original sound, Chris. How incriminating is it? What is the original sound? Because I have not heard it, of Stugotz talking to the commissioner of baseball about this idea that the commissioner of baseball has now blatantly stolen in front of everybody. And it's a great idea, but I don't remember what Manfred's response was to this. So when you heard the sound, Chris, what did it reveal?
It revealed that, remember, we had the contentious interview with Manfred. So that's the one we combed through yesterday. We thought it was in there. We had him on apparently before that. And that's when Stugotz, before we had all the tension. So this was the interview before that. And we asked him, and it goes about how you'd expect. And Dan is kind of doing this stuff of like, oh, you're wasting the guy's time. So he, we're kind of, he dismisses it completely. The thing that he's open to now, he completely dismisses.
Not open to. The thing that we're accusing him publicly of stealing from Stugotz.
I have had attorneys reach out to me on social media saying they'd like to represent me, that I have a case against Major League Baseball.
Copyright case?
Yes.
I don't think you have any ownership over this particular idea, but I want to claim it nationally.
Commissioner, if I may, let me present you with a radical change.
Oh, no.
If I may.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, for the love of
I like
God.
to call it, Commissioner, I like to call it the magic at bat. Okay? Now just hear me out for a second, okay?
Oh.
Commissioner, when you go to an NBA game, okay, you are guaranteed you're going to see LeBron James or Dwayne Wade or Kevin Durant or Westbrook if
Don't
they're not
waste
injured.
this man's time.
You
He's
guarantee
an important man who's so important that he's got people on the line with phlegm problems that are listening in on his conversation.
But I think the commissioner will agree with me on this one. You're guaranteed to see those guys play 35, 40 minutes, which is basically like 90, 95% of the entire game.
Let's get to it.
In baseball, when I go to a Marlins game, I'm only going to see 4 at-bats at Stanton. So I want to implement what I like to call the magic at-bat, where each manager at any time during the game
for the love of God,
can go with, because, Commissioner, I'm not going to see a pitcher hit. I'm not going to see a shortstop hit. I'm going to see Stanton hit. So 4 to 5 magic at-bats for each manager, where he can put Stanton in whenever he wants. And
Speed it up!
And there's smoke, and the kids love magic,
You're
Commissioner.
wasting this man's time.
What do you think?
I'm with your friend. You're wasting my time.
Yes.
I think that's a crazy idea.
But you would agree, more time the stars are on the field, the better for baseball.
Really? You're going to continue to argue this? You're really going to continue to argue
Let
this?
me give you a really serious answer about a suggestion like that. We are very open to the idea of making changes to the game. We see pace of game as one example of it. We see instant replay from last year as another example of it. When you make those changes, I think it's always important to ask yourself the question as to whether you are interfering with the history and the traditions of the game. And I think the suggestion that you just floated would fall squarely in the category of would interfere with the history and traditions of the game.
So that's a maybe.
No. I mean, yeah, let's get that started.
I think that's a no, actually.
A defiant and angry no.
But, Commissioner, did you hear about the smoke?
Did you
hear
hear
that part?
the part about the smoke? That's proof, is it not? That's
Thank
not.
you.
That's not
Proof.
AI.
Thank you.
That's
Yes.
I want to find myself retroactively for Tone for not
You should, and no support.
Not supporting you enough. Yes, that should be a new fine. We need to come up with a whole new fine system. I ended the other fine system, so we need to come up with an enforceable fine system. I don't know how much money Greg Cody owes. He hasn't paid money, and I don't know how long.
Let's keep it that way.
I don't know how to enforce any of this, but we should be enforcing something. There should be some rules from the show that gave you forbid flag planting because we love rules so much. We want more rules in sports. It's what we're about. Rules and Ward. Commissioner's named Ward.
Oh, I love
the
it.
warden.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good nickname. I think we'd agree that that's a good nickname.
Great nickname. Thank you. You're welcome.
Mike, how's the oral history going? Because I know that I have enjoyed listening, reminiscing about some of the stuff, and I know the listeners have been listening to a lot of it, so I assume you're not getting a whole lot of criticism on it.
I'm not getting a whole lot of criticism on it. One of the criticisms that I've received, very few of them on social media, is like, hey, I'm trying to listen to some of the earlier episodes. Where can I find the earlier episodes? Because it's on our main channel feed. It doesn't have its own dedicated RSS feed, and people are finding it hard to find. Go to lebatardaf.com. We have a special page where we put together a playlist so you can listen to just the oral history episodes. It's been fun. It's been revealing. It's been like to record these a little taxing because we're covering some old shit that, it drums up some good memories, some not so good memories. You put yourself back in those stressful places. The next episode really covers, for me, the most stressful time in our show's history, and that'll be coming at you next Friday. But I'm really proud of it. I love the contributions. It was good to hear Old Money Charlie on the last episode and see how much he's grown from his experience with us. And I'm really grateful that the listening audience has really responded to it. And maybe at the end of all of this, we do something with these episodes that we put together, and maybe we get an audio book that's up to snuff.
I'll read it.
I don't believe that you will read it or sell it or show up to churches to celebrate it.
Synagogue would be nice.
Dan, truth be told, I did flip on my Miami CFP argument in 24 hours, and I was absolutely pressured by the powers that be at Miami.
Wait, but who's bought and paid for it?
I claimed he was bought and paid for.
Yeah, but I'm the one doing the buying and paying, and I just
true.
do what
That's
they tell
different.
me. Yeah,
You're paying and
yeah,
he's paying to be
the power
bought and
dynamic
paid
on
for.
this is
It's
really
weird.
inverted. But college athletics, we love it. But you didn't really fight for your program. I just got texted by Todd Fritz over at the Dan Patrick Show, and there's like, hey, short notice, but is there any chance that you can join us live in an hour to talk about the CFP?
Nice.
Dan, yesterday I realized after having my arm twisted by my head coach that this is a politicking game. If DeBoer's going on McAfee, we're a front-facing Miami show. We'll be damned if we let this happen. Now, we mobilized and we did what we could, and we were so close. But would you like to join Dan Patrick and for really truly argue with conviction that Miami should be in this? Because I don't actually believe you think Miami should be in it.
Well, I could absolutely and easily argue. I could absolutely muster righteous indignation on behalf of, if you're going to make it a made-for-television event, hey, how about giving me the best quarterback and the best offense and let me take my chances in a shootout game? You're going to promise me a shootout game. I can absolutely do that with conviction, but I think I'd prefer for you, Jeremy, and Jessica to make the argument on behalf of all of it, because you guys are still making merit-based arguments when I continue to look at you and be like, what are you guys talking about? Like, how do you not understand that they're going to tell you the 12th team is whatever the argument is, because you can make the argument for any 12th team, and then they're going to put Alabama on television because everybody wants to see Alabama on television.
So you want Mike to respond to Todd Fritz, I'm in, but I'm bringing Jess and Jeremy with me?
The whole show. That the whole
the
show
entirety
is
of the
about
show?
to make the argument, not just me.
I like the idea of the three of them doing it. I think the three of them are the most passionate about this, and they will help.
Well, they're the
Mike.
most passionate about college football, but Mike's the only one who's passionate about the Miami argument
Right.
of it.
I mean,
Are
it
you
was your
outsourcing
suggestion.
your own hit?
Yeah.
I also think, Mike, no offense to you, you did hurt the argument a little bit yesterday when you said Syracuse was as good as South Carolina and Alabama. So maybe doing a little bit more harm than good there.
My point is, there's
Got
this
carried
whole.
away.
What I hate so much about college football is the response to that is, "You're an idiot. What are you talking about? Alabama would smoke Syracuse." Really? Because if Syracuse plays Oklahoma, how does that game go? You just showed to me that you lost to 2 6-win teams. You lost to Vanderbilt as a huge favorite on the road. So don't tell me you know with full conviction that South Carolina is better than Syracuse, that Alabama is better than Syracuse, because this is the whole convenient thing that's working for the SEC. When they actually play these games, Dan, in bowl games and interconference, it doesn't hold up. Shine a light on it. Check out Ole Miss's record. 2 weeks ago, Nick Saban asked, what would Ole Miss's record be inside the Big 12? And I told you already, a team that went winless inside the Big 12 beat Arkansas, that beat Tennessee. And then the Big 12 tweeted out Ole Miss's scores against the Big 12. The Big 12 owns Ole Miss. It's convenient because everybody just thinks it's 2011 and they're the only conference that's paying players anymore. It's not. The talent has been dispersed. It's not a top 25 anymore. There are about 40 teams that on any given Saturday can beat you. So just coming at an argument to thoroughly dismiss Syracuse, a scenario in which Syracuse can beat Alabama, is not good faith.
I just dismissed them because they lost to Stanford. I think I'm actually the only person here that can be objective about this because I don't have an allegiance to any conference. I hate all conferences. This is why you guys should all just be independent because you get to choose who you play for. You get to decide who your non-conference games are. You get to decide who you play at the end of the season, the week before the playoff rankings come out. You get a choice. You get to decide what network you air on. You get to decide everything. It's great. You have independence. You have freedom. Ignore the stupid 5-team ACC deal that you made, which really at the end of the day only hurts you because Florida State stinks this year. That's another team you should be mad at, by the way, Florida State. I agree with you, though, in a lot of principle on what you're saying about the SEC. I think the SEC is probably the best conference in college football, but I don't think the gap between the SEC and the Big 10 and the Big 12 and the ACC is as big as SEC fans think it is. I think that this year in particular, the argument for that is really, really, really weak. I do, though, think that South Carolina and Alabama are better than Syracuse.
That's fine, but wasn't Lane, after they lost to Kentucky, saying, like, this is this conference, like, yeah, but why don't you try to play Kentucky? And then Louisville beats Kentucky by 40. It's just very interesting that people, and quite frankly, it's a lot of ESPN personalities that don't know jack shit about college football that just get the headlines. It's a lot of people that casually follow. Stugotz has been saying, God bless him, do it against Alabama for 2 decades. They're not actually watching the games. Nothing sticks to the SEC. When they get called on their bullshit, it just means more, brother. Because they get to have more teams in the college football playoff, so they get more lottery tickets, so you get the confirmation bias that, look, at the end of the day, they're champions.
Hang on for one. First of all, I think the Kentucky loss did disqualify Ole Miss from the playoff. Second, I think at the point in the season in which Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, Kentucky had just come off of the Georgia game, which was extremely close. And I think that was a fair argument to make at the time. Now, Kentucky proceeded to have one of their worst seasons of all time. So that argument aged terribly. But
they're the Stanford of the SEC.
At the time, you could maybe, okay, I don't know, maybe this loss is not the worst thing ever. But now that is clearly why they're not in it anymore. I also think there's another team that should be pissed off, which is South Carolina, because if Clemson wins the ACC, South Carolina, guess what they did this past weekend? They beat Clemson.
Yeah, but again, we were having this conversation during one of the breaks, and the general attitude, Clemson, they suck. Well, what does that make South Carolina? Because Clemson threw up on themselves. They were in control of that game the entire time. Clemson kind of stole that game was kind of stolen from Clemson in that South Carolina made plays at the end, and Klubnik turns the ball over when they're already in game-tying field goal range. So if Clemson sucks ass, doesn't South Carolina just suck a little less ass?
No. I mean, like, I get your point in general, but they won. So, like, when you beat your rival, even if it's ugly and it goes down to the last drive, you still won the game. And, like, the exact opposite argument is what happened to Miami, where if Miami wins by 4 points, we're not like, how much better is Miami than Syracuse? We're like, well, Miami's 11-1. They're in the ACC championship game.
The argument all year was win games and you get in, and Miami was in position to do so. And look, we've long known this is not a college football playoff. This is an ESPN college football invitational. It is what it is, but they've also been consistent the whole time. The first thing that they look at is how many great wins do you have? And what they're saying for Alabama is they beat Georgia and they beat South Carolina, and those are better wins than Miami. And then after that, what they look for is good losses in their mind. But when you have the first determining factor being good wins, they have 2 ranked wins, and Miami doesn't have any.
Well, they have Missouri also.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, Missouri being ranked all season long. But I would disagree with you, Jeremy, in that what is the one thing they prioritize? It shifts. Every year it's something new. Strength of schedule didn't matter until it did. And this is not my take. This is Greg McElroy, famous Alabama grad. Like, he even admitted that the scale that this thing was judged on changed in the last few days.
There's also different committee members this year. I mean, I think that last year what happened with the playoff with Florida State getting left out, even though they won all their games, which, like, Jared Barrett, you're right. It's always been like, well, win all your games, and there's no argument about it. Well, in a 14 playoff, they got left out, and it was really stupid. And so I think a lot of credibility was lost from people that think that the committee will do anything to put SEC teams in, even though there is I'm not saying it's super legit, but there is a decent enough argument for Alabama to be over Miami this year because of Georgia.
We're parsing.
Last year, I think, is really what's tainting this entire conversation and pissing people off, rightfully so.
But you said it's an ESPN Open Invitational. If you look at the investment that ESPN has made in the ACC compared to what they've made in the SEC, all this stuff starts making a little bit more sense.
You're totally right.
The place that I'm going to need some help with, because we've got a real tension here at Meadowlark Media, as we've got rising stars and there are only so many microphones that we have, and we're trying to give them to as many people as possible. But what ends up happening is the following. I'm promising that while everything you guys just talked about is a very interesting college football argument, the weeds of it are fascinating, okay? But I sat here next to Greg Cody and Stugotz and saw that they weren't listening to a word you guys were saying, because you guys want to do this show where we're playing the sound of Ward Manuel. So I'm going to give you the show you guys want to do. Here's Ward Manuel, because sports needs more Ward.
Well, Reese, it's good to be with you again. What it came down to is, as we evaluated both teams and looked at how they rank, obviously we think highly of both teams. One's at 11, one's at 12. But what it really came down to is Alabama is 3-1 against current top 25 teams, and Miami is 0-1. Alabama is 6-1 against teams above 500, and Miami's 4-2. Both have had some losses that weren't what they wanted out of those games. But in the last 3 games, Miami has lost twice. And so for us, in evaluating their body of work, we felt that Alabama got the edge over Miami.
So the show you guys want to do, and Dan Patrick's asking me to be on it, and as I listen to you guys talk, I'm like, well, maybe we can just create these characters. Hey, anti-SEC voice, Notre Dame fan, annoying guy. And we can have them
annoying guy.
Just talk.
Leave him alone. He just ended a point by saying I was right.
Just talk at Dan Patrick and just make his eyebrows singe with how much you've learned about college football. Or,
dude, you're really triggering me by not offering me a rebuttal.
Or, yeah, no, I know. And you were offering Ward rebuttals. I'm hearing this over 500 thing makes me crazy. While Ward was talking, yes, I know you've got plenty of rebuttals. That's the show you want to do.
There are 3 teams not ranked in the top 25 specifically because Miami beat them. In fact, Miami is also 3-1 when you make it a top 30. And also, is 500 not 500 and above? They lost to 2 6-6 teams here, people.
Okay, so the thing I need help with, because I'm trying to tell you guys something. Like I'm laughing at all of this because Greg Cody, the owners of local car dealerships wearing loud orange jackets who used to run this sport gave the ACC to John Skipper, the CEO of this company. That bad ACC deal that Jessica is talking about, one of the historically worst in the history of television for the people who had value, was concocted by our CEO. Because this is all made-for-television nonsense, and you guys don't seem to understand it. As you argue about the merits of this, and the show I want to do is 50 Shades of Greg, where Greg Cody reads some of this content so that Chris Cody can feel the way I do when you play that sound of my father. Greg, what do you mean you're not going to read it? It's 50 Shades of Greg.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
I mean, live, that's a lot of pressure.
I also sent you a script via email that might be cleaner.
I saw it, and it wasn't cleaner.
Wait a minute. I've got it. You're refusing to do
this?
this?
You might have approached me about this off air,
It is graphic. Like we
do
edited-
a live show. They didn't approach me on air about playing 50 Shades of Poppy. That's something they unleashed on me 3 minutes into the show.
In my dad's defense, those were edited and bleeped where needed to
we'll
be.
bleep butt plug again. Don't worry.
So we're gonna
There's
bleep
worse
it in-
than butt plug in the things that I read.
Well, why don't you come up with an old-timey word as a replacement so we can make this more appropriate?
All right, so I'll do it next. Regardless, nobody wants to do the show I want to do. Everybody wants to do their own show. We'll figure out who wins on Dan Patrick, perhaps.
This episode of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz is presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York.
Stugotz, I feel uncomfortable whenever one of our heroes and mentors, Dan Patrick, shows up with his team, his army of professionals to request something of us, and our people start pinballing against each other to make everything right for the other Dan, the serious Dan.
Right.
And I don't like what happens around here in terms of a whole lot of frenetic planning for a segment. And I don't know how to do that segment with Dan Patrick because I'd kind of like Jeremy, Jessica, and Mike to just spill all over his show instead of us just gasbagging about college sports. But I'm also afraid that they'll get so serious that they'll do a very serious sports segment for Dan Patrick today, and I don't really want to do that either. We're teaming up and partnering with Dan Patrick and Peacock on a number of things. Mike, I don't want to announce anything
then don't. Thank
beforehand.
you.
No,
thank
I'd
you.
like to know.
There you go. That's the right judgment. Don't announce anything.
Air.
There you go. In fact, don't even allude to it. Thank you.
We're making a lot of things that we want to do with Dan Patrick and his team because we're big admirers. But I don't want to take sports talk so seriously that we have to do sports talk the way that pillar of professionalism, Dan Patrick, does it. But our messiness soils his integrity and his show's name when we appear. We can't physically keep the lights on around here because he's doing it differently than we are.
Dan, he asked for you in terms of media personalities that are so closely associated with the University of Miami. You're probably number 2 behind me.
I want to throw the show to you guys as characters. We'll figure out how to do it. I don't know when we're going to do it. During the break, though, Stugotz was making a lot of Ward Manuel jokes, a lot of jokes about the name. Ward Manuel, a big surprise to me. His first name and his last name, both first names and last names, like Anderson Cooper. We were obsessed with this a couple of weeks ago. I didn't even notice it when it made its way past us here. You guys want these power brokers in college sports to continue being power brokers in college sports. These wards and these like literal wards.
What Greg and I want, we want to discuss the Golden at Bat as well, but what we want out of the committee is for whoever the head of the committee is every year to be named Ward Manuel. Whether their name is Ward Manuel or not, that's really the job title.
Yep.
You're the Ward Manuel of college football of the committee because it's a perfect name. We're not going to do better than that.
It literally means caretaker, right? A ward, somebody.
Mm-hmm.
The word means you're a caretaker for college sports.
Yes.
He also looks like that physically, like a bodyguard for college sports who is aged.
You're saying he's like the Dread Pirate Roberts? Like you assume the title when you get the job. There's multiple of them, right?
Yes.
You get the Ward Manual.
Right.
That's the job, the most powerful man in sports.
Yeah,
I want Reese Davis to introduce, if it's a guy named Tom Davis, to introduce him as the Ward Manual of the college football
exactly.
committee. Yes.
And the surname works as well because a manual is your guide for how to do things right. You're opening up the manual.
Look at him.
Wow.
Look at him.
Look at that.
Yes.
Words coming together.
Yes, Ward Manual.
But it's actually Ward Manuel.
It's also the old rare silent E at the end of Ward. I don't like that.
No, I don't either.
I don't like this guy
Don't trust
whatsoever.
it.
Wardy.
Don't trust it. It should be Wardy. It becomes Wardy. But
Too wordy.
Stugotz is too wordy.
Yeah, a little too wordy.
Yeah.
On that name.
See what he did there?
Yeah.
You know what? That's perfect. That joke is perfect.
Thank you.
Stugotz, the Golden at Bat stolen from you by the commissioner of baseball.
Outraged.
How do we've got to tell Dan Patrick about that, right? Like we've got to tell Dan. Somebody needs to make this a national controversy because we just proved it to you. Like baseball has stolen Stugotz's idea after laughing his idea out of the room, along with me, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for your support.
Yeah, really.
But we are glossing over, this is a really interesting topic and a really interesting rule change, and we're glossing over it. The first question I have is, if you are the guy that gets the Golden at Bat, do you go up to home plate with a gold bat? Because I think you should. If we're going to do it, let's do it. The second thing is, Dan, You have scenarios here where you can start questioning managers' decisions. They suddenly become more important. Like, why didn't he go to the golden at bat in that spot? Why did he give it to that guy and not that guy? You could have a scenario in a best-of-7 series where a guy, like back in our day with the Royals, Buddy Biancalana, was having a hell of a series. Do you use the golden at bat on a guy who's having a hot series or your actual best hitter? In the case of the Royals back then, it would have been George Brett. What a fascinating rule that I came up with for Major League Baseball.
If you're in the 7th inning and it's a big spot, do I use it now? Do I save it for the 9th
Right.
inning? Just so many decisions
I
to
mean,
make.
managers are suddenly important again.
Can I just say there's no shot that this actually happens, right?
Oh, I think it's happening.
I think he's just doing this, looking for a little off season. He wants to get the sport in the news.
I got to tell you, the feedback from what I listened to, and what I listened to was the morning show on ESPN Radio, and thank you to them for giving me the credit that I deserve. They actually did. They said, this is an idea that was floated about by Stugotz, okay? Thank you. But the reception to this rule has been positive.
It's great. It's great. Now, all of a sudden, baseball embraces change. It's always been terrible at that. They wanted to put Spider-Man logo on the bases for millions and millions of dollars to sell a movie, and baseball said, no, too precious for that.
Do you think the guy should have a golden bat?
Well, not only that, Stugotz. Not only do I
Gold
endorse
helmets?
Not Stugotz.
Oh,
yes, I would say you can't do what you're doing here more enough. Not just smoke, golden balls too throughout the at bat. Absolutely, and those
Look who's
balls,
on board now.
So now this is the final.
No, if you're baseball. If you're gonna embrace change, okay. If you're gonna make Stugotz a visionary pioneer on accepting all change, I would go ball pits in the outfield. I would go landmines in the outfield as well. If you want to really be violent,
excessive.
If you want to make it more, if you really want to pass football, you're gonna have to do it that way. Because look, this is in our DNA. Conquering of land and stuff, this is in our DNA. It's why we love football so much. Let's put landmines in the outfield, make it more violent. Now you got more football. Right. Baseball doesn't have enough concussions. I believe we can agree on that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, they need more.
Yep.
You two have to help me make this a national controversy with Dan Patrick, because Stugotz right now is ruling sports. Like, he's offering rule changes, and baseball's like, yep, okay. We'll take your idea, and it's a good idea. And it's a good idea for all the reasons you mentioned. It creates more conversation around, we can question the manager.
Yes.
You want to put as many of those in the game as possible.
Oh, my God, yes.
Wow. I mean, the potential for controversy here. Imagine you're in a Dodgers World Series game. It's the 8th inning. Ohtani's coming up. But he's having a bad series, and he's 0 for 4 today with 3 strikeouts. You got Gavin Lux, the second baseman. He is hitting .438 in this series. He's 4 for 4 today. You got to sit Ohtani.
And this is why they're not going to do this or let anyone criticize.
That is
it.
a hilarious.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine if that played out, though?
That is hilarious.
Seriously.
And it begs the question you kind of brought up before. Do you go with the hot hit, like the random guy that's 3 for 3?
Yeah.
There's a threshold. Ohtani's not the threshold.
That's correct. But the owners are in favor of this, I thought. Or Manfred was quoted as saying that this has a lot of support from owners. Why are you guys dismissing the possibility that baseball would do this?
I'm dismissing it because of what he said in that original clip. We don't make rule changes that are going to just affect the numbers and the history of the game. Now all the best players are going to get like 100 extra at-bats.
Yeah, but the numbers don't mean anything anyway. He knows that. I'm telling you, what happened during that interview is he heard a good idea. He stashed it away, created some distance from me, and then, I'm certain several people in Major League Baseball circles were calling him saying, Rob, that's actually a good idea.
Right.
He said, hey, we need to create distance from Stugotz. I'll unleash it in about 7 years. And here we are today with my rule, the magic at bat.
But what can we do other than just make noise about it? We don't have any.
That's about all we can do.
Well, why don't we get Drake's attorneys and embarrass ourselves by just filing lawsuits? How do we make a big public mess of this? Do we sue? Do we call our attorney and sue Major League Baseball for stealing for the intellectual property of Stugotz, which is like that? Like
this
Stugotz,
is not a bad idea.
Stugotz owning intellectual property, something called intellectual property.
I mean, he wrote a book.
Please help me.
I wrote a book.
Please help me make this a national controversy on Dan Patrick, and please help me establish who your characters are going to be. I'm not going to introduce you as Mike Ryan, Jessica, and Jeremy. Give me characters that I'm introducing.
We're going to fool them?
I was going to say, this is kind of have Dan connected like this. They want you.
They want you. Well,
Fritzy,
they know when they ask for you,
Yes.
the sort of cast of characters.
The task given to Fritzy was to get Le Batard.
Can you mic everybody? Can we get
We're in control of what goes through our board, and we've always done that.
Now, there is some pushback here. I have the original sound of our show, the first time we ever talked about the Magic at Bat. Now, yesterday we were giving credit to Stugotz and Billy. In this clip, there's other people that seem to have come up with this idea first. If you want to, let's listen to this.
You're wrong.
What I was saying, what Mike Ryan and I were discussing is I think one of the problems with baseball, Dan, and no one's really talking about it, is everyone's sitting here trying to fix something that I think is probably unfixable, but everyone's trying to fix it. The real problem with baseball is when you go to a basketball game, you go to a Cavs game, you're going to see LeBron James for 90% of the game. And he's going to give you 27, 8 and 8, and you're probably going to see a dunk or a pass that you've never seen before, and you're going to leave happy. When you go to a baseball game, an Anaheim Angel game, you're going to see Mike Trout every third inning. He has a better chance of going 0 for 4 than he does going 4 for 4 with a home run and 4 RBIs. And you're going to see Howie Kendrick just as much as you're going to see Mike Trout. I go to a Cavs game, I'm not going to see John Lucas III. I'm only going to see LeBron James. John Lucas III is a backup guard. I know you're having Mike check it right now on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm not going to see him. I'm going to see LeBron. So what I'm trying to figure out, Mike and I are trying to figure out, is I want to go in an Angel game, and I want to see Mike Trout every inning if possible.
So what are the Magic at Bats? How are you doing the Magic at Bats?
Like each manager has like 4 or 5 Magic at Bats in his back pocket. All right, so let's say it's like Mike Trout gets out in the first inning, but in the second inning, it's second and third, and there's one out. He has the option in that spot of putting Mike Trout back in the game. You see Mike Trout 2 innings in a row. Genius.
That's his idea, and his idea allows for a certain amount of theatrics. Like you could like throw like a smoke bomb or something. Magic at Bat time. Like you throw out the smoke bomb onto the field. Yeah.
Okay. A smoke bomb.
Yeah. Just like a little firework, like a little cherry bomb.
Magic.
Yeah.
All right. Time for a Magic at Bat. Oh, Mike Scioscia.
The smoke is on the field.
Mike Scioscia has thrown the smoke bomb. Time for a Magic at Bat.
It's a lot cooler aesthetically than like a red challenge flag.
And they're trying to appeal to a younger audience. Imagine how much a younger audience would love the smoke bomb. And then there's Mike Trout coming out, emerging from the smoke bomb.
That's proof. What's the date stamp on that?
2014.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
August 2014.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, I got to sue, right? I mean,
well, you have to sue. One of the other problems we have, though, is now David Sampson is claiming it was his idea, that you stole it from him.
What?
So David Sampson.
I've never stolen a single thing from David Sampson. He has nothing that I would want. I mean, get out of here. Sampson. Please, I stole it from him. Eisen stole it from me. I mean, that's the only thief in this game is Eisen and Rob Manfred. I didn't steal anything from David Sampson. Not a single thing have I ever stolen from David Sampson. David Sampson calling me a thief. That is rich. I mean, God.
You both.
I would like that sofa that's a baseball glove, though. I would love that thing. I mean, it's awesome. I don't know where he got that.
I'm
going to steal it from him.
Some great sentences there. You thieves, the two of you, calling anyone else rich. When both of you have gotten so rich off your thievery.
Right, but I have proof. Sampson has no proof.
No proof.
I don't know what he's claiming. I just, beyond saying that he is mad at you taking credit for something he thinks.
Was he doing a show in 2014? Just out of curiosity, was he? Because I was. Was he?
Well, he was still stealing money from taxpayers.
Right, calling me a thief. Ha! Rich!
He's going to take so much exception to that.